Okay, let's get started. So we're doing lesson 5.11, module 5, lesson 11 today. And your learning goal is I can use square units to show, draw, and calculate area. So it's basically just extending what we did yesterday. Really quickly though, I want you to turn to your table group and explain to them what a square unit is and what the difference between a square unit, a cubic unit, and a regular unit are. Go. So a regular unit is just a line, looks like that. Now draw a square unit. How many dimensions does a square unit have? Two. It has a length and a width. So a square unit looks like a square. What about a cubic unit? How many dimensions does a cubic unit have? Three. It has a length, a width, and a height. So it has 3 units. So a cubic unit will look like a 3D cube. Once you're at your lesson 11 problem set, you'll see that the directions say to draw the rectangle and your tiling. Tiling means putting these square units on each rectangle, okay? It's going to ask you to write the dimensions and the units you counted in the blanks. Then you're going to use multiplication to confirm the area, and we are going to show our work. Now your drawing should show the tiling, and it should show labels of each side. So as we said, the length is 3.5 units. The width is how many units? 2.5. So you're going to label it like that. And you're going to write it over here too. So get in the habit of labeling your drawing and writing it in the answer. Okay, now let's count how many tiles we used. There's 1 whole one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes. Okay. These two, how many halves do I have altogether? 1, 2, 3, 4. And so these two add up to 1, right? And these two add up to 1. So now how many holes do I have altogether?
8.
8 holes. And then I have 1/2 plus 1/4. What is 1/2 plus 1/4? Well, I have 6 holes plus 2 copies of 1/2, right? Well, that's I can't read it. 2 copies of 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/4. So we know that this part we said adds up to 2, right? And what's 1/2? What's 6 plus 2, by the way? 8. So we have 8 plus 1/2 plus 1/4. Well, I can't add them because I don't have common denominators. But I do know that 1/2 is the same as 2/4, right? So I can use common denominators like that. So what's 8 plus 2/4 plus 1/4? 8 and 3/4. So the area is 8 and 3/4. What kind of units? Square units. Very good. Now, let's check our work using multiplication. Okay, hang on one sec. Hide this back here. Put this in here. Very nice. Okay, let's check our work using multiplication. We know that area is the same as length times width. So what's my length? 3 and 1/2. Okay, what's my width?
2 and 1.
2 and 1/2. Now, if I'm going to multiply fractions, I could either use the distributive property and multiply all the whole numbers by the fractions and all the fractions by the whole numbers, or I can convert them into what kind of fractions? Improper fractions. Very good. How do I write 3 and 1/2 as an improper fraction? How many halves are in one whole? 2. So how many halves are in one whole? How many holes do we have here? So how many halves are in 2 holes?
4.
How many halves are in 3 holes?
6.
So I have 6 halves plus 1/2. So how many halves is that?
7.
Okay, so I have 7 halves times, what about 2 and 1/2? How do I write that as an improper fraction?
5 halves.
Very good. Okay, so now that I just have improper fractions, I can multiply across the numerators and the denominators. What's 7 times 5?
35.
What's 2 times 2?
4.
So I have 35/4. Can I simplify that?
Yes.
How many fourths are in one hole? 4. So how many holes do I have there?
8.
8. And then how many fourths do I have left over?
3/4.
So when it says to check or multiply to confirm your area, I want you to actually show the multiplication. Don't just say, oh, I think it should be the same number. Does that make sense? You have to show out this work of how you convert it into improper fractions and how you get there. This answer is actually wrong because what do I need?
Units.
Units. What? What kind of units? Square units. Very good. Now, I'm trying to tile this rectangle and I have an area left over here. Okay, and I don't know how big of a piece I need of my square units. Let me ask you a question. What is this dimension right here, from here to here? 3/4. What is this dimension from here to here?
3/4.
I can tell this side right here is 3/4 because it was 3/4 right here. Do you agree? Okay. Now, this dimension here, it's also 3/4 because it's 3/4 up here. Do you see that? So how can I find the area of just this section here? I can do 3/4 times 3/4. Don't you agree? What is 3/4 times 3/4? 9/16. So that means that the area of this part right here is 9/16. You do not need to cut a 9/16 piece and put it there. All you need to do is explain to your team members right now how we found out that this missing piece right here is 9/16. Go. Okay, to draw it, you're going to sketch out the outline, and you're going to label, looking at your tiling now, what is the length? How many holes do we have? 1, 2, 3, plus what fraction? 3/4. So it's 3 3/4 units long. Okay. You can also write it into here, 3 3/4. Okay, nice. Now, how wide is it? Take a look at your tiling. How many full units are there? 1. And what fraction is there? So over here we have 1 3/4. You're going to label it. Then you're going to draw your tiling. So go ahead and draw that you have 1, 2, 3 3/4, and then 1 going that way. Then you're going to label your tiling just like how you labeled your square units. Your drawings should look like this: 3/4, 3/4, 3/4, and then the last section is how big? 9/16. Again, we got that because we were able to find the area based on the measurements. Okay. This is an example of what a complete sketch or a complete drawing should look like. Now let's count up the tiles to get the area. How many whole square units do we have? 3. Okay. How many 3/4 size ones do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 4 copies of 3/4. What is 4 copies of 3/4? Well, it's 12/4, right? Which is 3. Okay. And then I have 9/16 right here, right? So I have 3 plus 3 plus 9/16. What's 3 plus 3? 6 plus 9/16 is what? 6 9/16 square units. Now let's check it using what we know. Let's verify it using what we know about multiplication. Well, we know area is length times width. So what's my length?
3 3/4.
Okay. I have to multiply it by my width. What's my width?
1 3/4.
Okay. Are those improper fractions or mixed numbers? So what do we need to do? Change them to? Good. 3 3/4 is what improper fraction?
15.
Okay. 1 3/4 is what improper fraction?
7/4.
Now we can multiply. What's 15 times 7? Well, what's 7 times 10?
17.
What's 7 times 5?
35.
So what's 70 plus 35?
105.
Okay. A lot of us make mistakes here. We just put it over 4. But is that how we do multiplication? We have to do 4 times 4, which is?
16.
Okay. Now, is that an improper fraction? Yes, because the numerator is larger than the denominator, which tells me I have at least one whole number. How many 16ths does it take to make one whole?
16.
16. So how many holes do I have in there?
6.
Really? What's 6 times 16?
96.
What's 7 times 16?
112.
102.
No, 112.